San Francisco, 1995. The morning fog enveloped the Mission District, where vibrant murals told stories of struggle and hope. Miguel Rodriguez, 32, hurried down 24th Street, his white UCSF lab coat neatly folded over his arm. His tired brown eyes reflected sleepless nights and a restless mind. A medical student, Miguel was admired by peers and professors. Impeccable grades, precise answers, a smile that hid any trace of doubt. But inside, he was hollow. Every choice, from pursuing medicine to the clothes he wore, was guided by one question. What will they think of me? The son of Mexican immigrants, Miguel grew up hearing he had to be the best to honor his parents' sacrifices. The pressure shaped him. He smiled to please, studied to impress, silenced his dreams to avoid disappointment. That morning, as the aroma of fresh tacos wafted from a nearby taqueria, he stopped before a Frida Kahlo mural, her bold colors and defiant gaze staring back. "Why can't I be like that?" he murmured, almost unaware. Frida's authenticity confronted him, a mirror he avoided. At UCSF, Miguel prepared to present a study to a demanding panel. "You're our star, Rodriguez," said Dr. Carter, his advisor, with a pat on the shoulder. Miguel smiled, but his stomach churned. He wanted to discuss community health, a topic that burned in his chest, but chose a more impressive subject to ensure praise. Adjusting his glasses, he glanced out the window at the distant Golden Gate Park, where he ran to escape his thoughts. A whisper stirred within. What if I stopped pretending? The presentation was a success, but as he returned home, the emptiness grew. He opened an old notebook, where years ago he'd written poems about who he wanted to be. The words, so distinctly his, felt like a stranger's. In that moment, he decided he needed to change. But how to begin when his entire life was built to please? The Mission District buzzed with life that afternoon in 1995. Mariachi music spilled from a record store, blending with the clatter of streetcars and Spanish conversations. Miguel Rodriguez walked toward UCSF, the weight of his poetry notebook fresh in his mind. At 32, he was a familiar figure on campus, tall, tan-skinned, with wire-rimmed glasses that lent a serious air, but his slumped shoulders betrayed the insecurity he hid so well. He wanted to be a doctor to help communities like the one he grew up in, but every step seemed guided by others' approval, professors, peers, even strangers. At the university hospital, Miguel met his best friend, Ana Morales, a 30-year-old pediatrics resident with a warm smile and disarming honesty. Ana, also a child of Mexican immigrants, understood cultural pressures, but lived with an authenticity Miguel envied. "Did you see the new mural on 24th? She asked over coffee in the cafeteria. "It's about resistance. Reminded me of you, you know? Always fighting, but for what?" Miguel looked away, feigning interest in his coffee. "Just want to do what's right, Ana," he replied softly. She raised an eyebrow. Right for who? San Francisco in the 1990s shaped Miguel's life. The city was a melting pot of change. Technology bloomed in Silicon Valley, but inequality scarred neighborhoods like the Mission. The Latino community, vibrant and resilient, faced gentrification and prejudice. Miguel felt this deeply. The pride in his roots clashed with the pressure to fit in at the academic level, where being perfect seemed the only path. That week, Miguel faced his first major challenge. Dr. Carter summoned him to lead a research project on public health. It was a chance to address community health, a passion sparked by his mother's struggle with limited medical access. But Carter suggested a more prestigious topic on surgical technology advancements. "This will put you on the map, Rodriguez," he said, his tone final. Miguel nodded, ignoring the tightness in his chest. He wanted to say no, but the fear of disappointing Carter, or seeming less brilliant, paralyzed him. At home, a cramped Mission apartment, Miguel flipped through his poetry notebook. One page described a boy dreaming of being a poet, not a doctor. He slammed it shut, the sound echoing in the silence. His roommate, Sophia, a 28-year-old artist who painted neighborhood murals, noticed his unease. "You okay, Miguel?" she asked, wiping paint from her hands. He hesitated, then confessed. "Sometimes I feel like I don't know who I am. I just do what they expect." Sophia smiled gently. "That Frida mural?" She painted her pain. "Maybe you need to find yours." The next day, Miguel attended a class with Dr. Elena Torres, a Latina professor who challenged the status quo. During a discussion on medical ethics, she asked, "Why did you choose medicine?" No canned answers. Miguel stayed silent as peers spoke of prestige or saving lives. For the first time, he wanted to say the truth. He wanted to help marginalized communities, but feared he wasn't enough for it. The class ended, but Elena's words lingered. Medicine without purpose is just vanity. Miguel's inner conflict grew. He began to see how his choices, from accepting Carter's project to avoiding personal talks with Anna, were attempts to maintain a facade. At Golden Gate Park, while running, he stopped by a lake breathless. The water reflected the gray sky, and he wondered, what if I chose for myself? But the fear of failing, of losing the respect he craved, was an invisible chain. An invitation to a community event in the Mission, organized by Sophia, loomed as the next step. He hesitated. Attending meant facing who he truly was, or could be. Night fell over the Mission district, and the streetlights cast a glow on murals that seemed to whisper tales of resistance. Miguel Rodriguez, clutching the community event invitation, hesitated at his apartment door. The event, hosted by Sophia, celebrated Latino culture and raised funds for a community clinic. It was the kind of cause that ignited something in Miguel, but also terrified him. What if he seemed out of place? What if his ideas about public health weren't well received? He tucked the invite into his pocket, but Sophia's words echoed, "Find your pain." At UCSF, pressure mounted. Dr. Carter's research project consumed Miguel's nights. He pored over books on surgical technology in the library, a topic that left him uninspired. During a meeting, Carter praised his progress. "You're exceeding expectations, Rodriguez. Keep it up." Miguel smiled, but the praise felt like a tighter chain. He wanted to talk about community health, but fear of disappointing Carter silenced him. Anna noticed his restlessness. In the campus courtyard, she pressed him. "Miguel, you're killing yourself for something that's not even yours. Why not speak what matters to you?" He averted his gaze, mumbling, "It's not that simple, Anna. I can't risk everything." The Mission community event was a burst of color and sound. Mariachis played, kids darted between food stalls, and a stage showcased traditional dances. Miguel arrived hesitant, in a button-up shirt that felt too stiff for the vibe. Sophia spotted him and pulled him into a discussion with community leaders. There, he met Javier, a 40-year-old activist running the clinic. Javier spoke passionately about healthcare access for immigrants, stirring Miguel. "Medicine isn't just technology," Javier said. "It's listening to people, understanding their pain." Miguel wanted to contribute, but hesitated, fearing he'd sound naive. He nodded, feeling the weight of his inauthenticity. Back at the apartment, Miguel opened his poetry notebook. A page described a young man torn between two worlds, what others expected and what he longed to be. He grabbed a pen, but words wouldn't come. Sophia, painting a sketch in the living room, noticed his frustration. "Ever thought about chasing what makes you feel alive?" she asked. Miguel gave a bitter laugh. "What if I don't know what that is?" Sophia pointed to the notebook. "I think you do. You're just scared to admit it." At UCSF, a new conflict emerged. Dr. Elena Torres announced a seminar where students could present personal projects. It was the perfect chance for Miguel to discuss community health, but he was already committed to Carter's project. During class, Elena noticed his silence. Afterward, she pulled him aside. "Miguel, you have something to say. Why hold back?" He stammered, admitting, "I want to talk about marginalized communities, but I'm not sure it's what they expect." Elena smiled firmly. "Medicine needs voices like yours, but only if you're honest with yourself." Miguel's inner conflict intensified. He began to see how his need for approval distanced him from his true self. At Golden Gate Park, during a run, he stopped under a tree, panting. The Golden Gate Bridge loomed in the distance, reminding him of his mother's stories about crossing borders for a dream. "She believed in me," he thought, but believing in himself felt like a chasm. The seminar and Carter's expectations loomed, as did the community event's promise. He needed to decide, the safe path or the risk of being true. A conversation with Anna brought clarity. At Fisherman's Wharf, amidst tourists, she shared her own struggle to assert herself as a Latina doctor. "I used to want to please everyone," she said. "But I learned if I'm not myself, what's the point?" Miguel listened, feeling a spark of courage. The seminar approached, and with it, a chance to take a step toward authenticity, or remain trapped by others' approval. The seminar led by Dr. Elena Torres loomed like a storm over San Francisco's foggy skyline, mirroring Miguel Rodriguez's inner turmoil. After his talk with Anna at Fisherman's Wharf, he decided to present his personal project on community health, a bold shift toward authenticity. But a startling revelation hit him like a punch. Sophia, his roommate, found an old letter among his things while tidying the apartment. Written by his mother years ago, during their immigration to the U.S. in the 1980s. A time of dreams tangled with prejudice and poverty. It spoke of pride but also freedom. Son, don't live to prove anything to anyone. Be yourself, even if it hurts. Miguel read the words, tears blurring the ink. He'd always thought his parents wanted him to be perfect to honor them, but here was the truth. They wanted him free. All this time, I chained myself to an illusion? He thought, his chest tight. At the seminar, the UCSF auditorium was packed with students, professors, and community guests, the air thick with anticipation. Miguel took the stage, hands sweaty on the podium. He spoke about community health in the Mission District, highlighting how gentrification and lack of resources affected Latino families. Medicine isn't just about healing bodies, he said, voice steady. It's about healing communities, hearing their real voices. The audience nodded and Anna, in the crowd, beamed with pride. But then came a twist. Dr. Carter, seated in the front row, raised his hand during Q&A. Interesting, Rodriguez, Carter said, his tone clipped. But this sounds more like activism than medicine. How does it align with our project? Miguel froze. He hadn't expected public confrontation. The auditorium murmured, and panic surged, the fear of disappointing. But his mother's words echoed, giving him strength. Dr. Carter, I respect your work, but this is what I believe in. Healthcare is for everyone, not just those who can afford it. The response came from his core, and the silence that followed was electric. Carter frowned, but Elena interjected. This is exactly what we need to discuss. Thank you for your honesty, Miguel. After the seminar, the revelation deepened. Javier, the activist from the community event, approached Miguel in the hallway. Your talk moved me. We want you at the clinic as a volunteer. It was an offer that aligned with his values, but demanded time he gave to Carter's project. Miguel accepted, feeling both exhilaration and dread. That night, at Golden Gate Park, he walked alone, the cold wind cutting through his jacket. The bridge in the distance symbolized connections, and he realized his need for approval had isolated him. His mother's letter was the trigger. He'd projected others' expectations onto himself, ignoring his own voice. Anna met him in the park, concerned. You were amazing today, but I saw the fear in your eyes. Miguel confessed. I found a letter from my mom. She didn't want me to live to please. I built this cage in my head. Anna hugged him, sharing her own realization from years ago when she broke free from external pressures. It's the first step, Miguel. But there's more to come. The talk strengthened his resolve, but Carter's email, questioning his commitment, loomed. The revelation took on historical weight. San Francisco's 1990s vibrancy, with its protests against inequality, echoed Miguel's struggle. Walking through the Castro district, he reflected on the era's AIDS activism, where people faced rejection for living authentically. It inspired him. If others could endure judgment, so could he. But Carter's ultimatum lingered, promising more challenges. Miguel's poetry notebook filled with new verses, capturing his pain and hope. Sophia, seeing his shift, painted a mural of a man breaking chains, inspired by him. The tension was palpable. His authenticity was taking shape, but the cost was still unclear. The sun rose over San Francisco, casting golden hues on the Mission District, but Miguel Rodriguez felt an inner storm. His mother's letter and the courage shown at the seminar had shifted something deep within, but the consequences of his boldness emerged. Dr. Carter's email, cold and direct, echoed. I hope your presentation doesn't reflect a lack of focus on our project. Sitting in his apartment kitchen, Miguel reread the message, his coffee growing cold. For the first time, he wondered if pleasing Carter was worth sacrificing his values. Sophia burst in, carrying a freshly painted canvas inspired by Miguel's mural. You heard what they're saying about your speech? She asked, grinning mischievously. She showed him a Mission community newspaper praising his talk as a cry for forgotten communities. Miguel blushed, torn between pride and anxiety. That's good, right? He said hesitantly. Sophia laughed. Good. It's you being you, Miguel. But now what? Keep going or crawl back to your shell? The question made him swallow hard. He wanted to push forward, but Carter's disapproval pulled him back. At UCSF, reactions to his presentation varied. Anna met him in the cafeteria, squeezing his shoulder. You were incredible, Miguel. You said what so many of us feel but don't voice. She admitted his talk inspired her to propose changes to the pediatrics program, focusing on immigrant children. But not everyone was supportive. Some peers, who once saw him as the star, whispered in the halls. "Rodriguez turning activist now," one said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Miguel tried to ignore it, but each comment stung, reigniting his urge to please. He began volunteering at the community clinic with Javier, a decision that filled him with purpose but also tension. Afternoons at the clinic, helping low-income families, were rewarding but cut into time for Carter's project. During one visit, a Mexican mother thanked him tearfully for explaining her son's care in Spanish. "You understand our reality," she said. The words warmed him but also confronted him. He was living for others in a new way, yet still hesitated to embrace his own voice. At Golden Gate Park, Miguel met Dr. Elena for an informal talk. She praised his courage but was blunt. "You opened a door, Miguel, but you're still half outside." "Why?" He admitted his fear of losing Carter's respect and career security. Elena shared her story. In the 1980s, she faced resistance as a Latina in medicine but chose her values. "It's not easy, but authenticity is the only path worth taking," she said. Her words planted a seed, but Miguel still felt torn between duty and desire. At home, Sofia urged him to keep writing poetry. He penned a piece about a bird trapped, learning to fly, reflecting his struggle. When he showed Sofia, she suggested he read at the next community event. "People need to hear this," she said. Miguel hesitated, fearing judgment, but agreed. At the event, in the heart of the mission, he read with a trembling voice. The raw, honest poem silenced the crowd before erupting in applause. For the first time, he felt the freedom of being seen for who he was. But adjusting to this new reality brought challenges. Carter called him for a tense meeting, visibly annoyed. "You're wasting your potential on lesser causes," he said, issuing an ultimatum. Focus on the project or lose his recommendation. Miguel left the meeting shaken, the weight of the choice crushing him. Walking through the Castro district, where the 1990s fight for rights echoed, he reflected on historical struggles for authenticity. If others faced rejection for being themselves, why couldn't he? His mother's letter, tucked in his pocket, was a constant reminder. Be yourself, even if it hurts. But the cost of authenticity seemed steeper than ever. The weeks that followed in San Francisco brought a breeze of change for Miguel Rodriguez, but also winds that threatened to topple him. Dr. Carter's ultimatum loomed like a shadow over his career, forcing him to balance volunteering at the community clinic with UCSF's official project. New developments in his personal and professional life complicated his journey to authenticity, weaving together relationships, challenges, and memories that resurfaced like ghosts from the 1990s. A new personal challenge emerged with a letter from his cousin Rafael, living in Los Angeles. Rafael wrote about the pressure to follow Miguel's footsteps, the family's pride. He confessed to dropping out of college, fearing he couldn't meet expectations. "You always seem so perfect," he wrote. "How do you do it?" The letter shook Miguel. He realized his facade of perfection not only trapped him but also made others, like Rafael, feel inadequate. He wanted to respond honestly, but hesitated. Revealing his struggles meant dismantling the image his family held. At UCSF, pressure intensified. Javier asked Miguel to lead a campaign against gentrification, threatening to close mission community spaces. It required speaking at public meetings, terrifying Miguel. "You've got the right voice for this," Javier urged during a packed clinic meeting. Miguel agreed, but panic grew. What if his words weren't convincing? He rehearsed speeches at the apartment, with Sofia offering constructive feedback. "Stop worrying about what they'll think," she said. "Speak from the heart." But fear of public failure consumed him, evoking childhood memories of his father urging him to be the family's pride. Anna brought another layer of complexity. Over lunch at Fisherman's Wharf, the scent of fresh crab in the air, she confessed, "I'm thinking of quitting residency. The pressure's too much, and seeing you change makes me question everything." Miguel was stunned. Anna had always seemed unshakable. He encouraged her, sharing his mother's letter, but it forced him to face his own hypocrisy. How could he preach authenticity while still wavering? This interaction fueled his motivation but added guilt. If he faltered, he'd let Anna down. In the historical context, San Francisco pulsed with 1990s social movements. Protests against California's Proposition 187, aiming to restrict immigrant services, echoed in the streets. Miguel joined a rally at Golden Gate Park, organized by Javier, holding a "Healthcare for All" sign. He felt the power of unity but also the risk. Event photos circulated, and a UCSF colleague warned, "You're getting too involved, Rodriguez. This could taint your reputation." The comment shook him, highlighting how his authenticity clashed with the medical establishment's conservatism. At home, Sophia shared a personal challenge that mirrored Miguel's. She struggled to showcase her art at a gallery, fearing rejection. "We're alike, aren't we?" she said, painting. Miguel helped with her portfolio, and in return, she pushed him to read his poems at a Castro District literary cafe. The reading was a hit, but a negative comment. "Too emotional, less professional," stung, reigniting his insecurities. Yet the applause lingered, pushing him forward. These developments complicated the narrative, forcing Miguel to navigate career, family, and self. Carter's ultimatum neared a decision, and a surprise call about his father's health added emotional urgency. Miguel saw that living authentically was a maze of tough choices. On a Mission hilltop overlooking the city, he whispered, "I can do this." But the challenges ahead promised more obstacles. The autumn chill of 1995 cut through San Francisco, and Miguel Rodriguez felt his choices weigh like an invisible chain. News of his father's hospitalization in Los Angeles for heart issues intensified his emotional dilemmas. He longed to visit, but Dr. Carter's ultimatum and clinic duties kept him tethered. Every interaction now was a mirror, reflecting his struggle between being what others expected and who he truly was. In the Mission District, Miguel prepared for his first public meeting as the anti-gentrification campaign leader. The community hall was packed, with residents, activists, and Latino families looking to him expectantly. Javier introduced him warmly. "Miguel knows our fight. He's one of us." But as he spoke about preserving the clinic, skeptical glances emerged. An elderly resident interrupted. "You're a doctor, aren't you? Why aren't you at a fancy hospital?" The question rattled him, reigniting insecurity. He stammered, but his mother's letter flashed in his mind. "Be yourself, even if it hurts." "Because I believe healthcare starts here, with you," he replied, voice gaining strength. The crowd cheered, but Miguel left trembling, doubting his impact. A letter from his cousin Rafael deepened the conflict. Rafael wrote of his struggle to live up to Miguel's perfect image, admitting he'd nearly quit college. "How do you do it?" he asked. Miguel was shaken. His facade had burdened others. He wanted to confess his struggles, but feared shattering his family's view. The dilemma gnawed at him. Honesty meant vulnerability. At UCSF, Anna's interaction revealed another layer. She'd chosen to stay in residency, inspired by Miguel's courage, but saw his strain. At Golden Gate Park, fog swirling around the trees, she asked, "Are you happy with where you're headed?" Miguel admitted, "Sometimes I feel I'll lose everything." Anna frowned. "You've already lost yourself trying to please. Don't go back." Her words hit hard, but her reliance on his strength added pressure. Sophia offered another emotional mirror. She'd secured a gallery spot, thanks to Miguel's help, and invited him to the opening. Amid vibrant Mission paintings, he saw the mural inspired by him, a man breaking chains. "That's you, Miguel," she said. "But you have to believe it." He smiled, but his father's health and Carter's ultimatum weighed heavily. He wrote a poem about a son torn between love and duty, but tore it up, frustrated by unanswered questions. At the clinic, a patient's gratitude intensified his dilemma. A young immigrant mother thanked him for helping her asthmatic son. "You make me feel seen," she said. But a visiting UCSF colleague remarked, "This is nice, but it won't get you to Harvard." The comment sparked anger. Why was his passion for marginalized communities deemed less? He confronted the colleague. "This is where medicine makes a difference." The small act of courage left him drained. San Francisco's 1990s social tensions added context. Protests against Proposition 187 raged, and Miguel joined a rally at Golden Gate Park, holding a "Healthcare for All" sign. He felt the collective power, but photos of him reached Carter, who called him for a tense meeting, warning that his activism was derailing his focus. Miguel left with his heart racing, facing the ultimate dilemma: follow his truth or cling to approval. On a Mission hilltop, city lights below, he clutched his mother's letter, whispering, "I want to be free." But the path to freedom felt more treacherous than ever. Tension in San Francisco mirrored Miguel Rodriguez's inner turmoil. As winter 1995 approached, the Mission District's foggy streets whispered tales of resistance and sacrifice. His father's fragile health, Dr. Carter's ultimatum, and the clinic campaign weighed heavily, but a new element of intrigue emerged. An anonymous complaint to UCSF's administration questioned Miguel's professionalism, citing his political activism in the anti-gentrification campaign. The news hit like lightning, pushing him to the edge of panic. At the clinic, Javier tried to calm him. "It's just someone trying to silence you," he said, sorting flyers for the next public meeting. "You're shaking up big interests." But Miguel couldn't shake the fear. What if the complaint cost him his career? He imagined disapproving faces, the loss of his residency chance. Yet clinic work grounded him. An elderly patient gripped his hand, thanking his dedication. "You remind me of my son," she said, eyes teary. He never gave up on what he believed. Her words recalled his mother's letter, but stirred guilt for not being with his father. At UCSF, tension escalated. Carter called Miguel for a formal meeting, with Dr. Elena Torres as mediator. Holding the complaint, Carter said icily, "Your outside involvement raises questions." Elena countered firmly, "He can be both a doctor and an advocate if medicine is about real impact." Miguel wanted to speak, but his voice caught. He left feeling like he was on a tightrope, career on one side, values on the other. Anna, sensing his distress, took him to a fisherman's wharf cafe, the air thick with the scent of sourdough. "You're letting them define you again," she said. "This complaint is about their fear, not you." Miguel shared Rafael's letter, admitting his cousin saw him as flawless. "If I fall now, what will he think?" he asked. Anna held his gaze. "Show him being human is better than being perfect." Her words reignited his resolve, but the complaint kept him on edge. Sophia added to the tension. She revealed the gallery hosting her work faced pressure from investors to clean up the mission, including her mural of Miguel. "They want to erase our history," she said at the apartment. "Will you let them erase yours?" The question hit hard. Miguel wrote a poem about a man in a maze of mirrors, each reflecting a false self. Sophia urged him to read it at a Golden Gate Park rally against Proposition 187. "Your voice can make a difference," she said. He hesitated, fearing it would fuel the complaint. San Francisco's 1990s unrest gave weight to the intrigue. Protests against Proposition 187, restricting immigrant services, filled the streets. Miguel spoke at a rally, his voice shaky but firm, advocating healthcare as a human right. The crowd roared, but a photographer's shot landed in local papers, amplifying UCSF scrutiny. A colleague left a note in his locker. "Pick your side, Rodriguez." The message hinted the complaint came from within his academic circle, intensifying the stakes. At home, Rafael called in crisis. "You always do everything right, Miguel." "I can't keep up," he said, voice breaking. Miguel was honest for the first time. "I'm not perfect, Rafael. I'm fighting to be myself." The confession was freeing but terrifying. He was exposing himself as never before. On a Mission hilltop, city lights below, he held his mother's letter, feeling the weight of intrigue and responsibility. The tension was at its peak. The complaint, his father's health, the campaign, and his identity intertwined, demanding a courage he wasn't sure he had. Winter 1995 cloaked San Francisco in dense fog, and Miguel Rodriguez felt the tension of his life tighten like a knot. The anonymous UCSF complaint, his father's unstable health, the anti-gentrification campaign, and the pressure to be a family role model pushed him to the brink. His connections with Ana, Sophia, Javier, and Rafael deepened, each offering support and challenge, forcing him to confront his addiction to approval. At the community clinic, Miguel grew closer to Javier. Planning the next anti-Proposition 187 rally, Javier shared his story. In the 1980s, he left a corporate career to fight for his community, facing family rejection. "You're on the same path, Miguel," he said, handing out flyers. "But how far will you go?" Miguel felt the weight of his words. He wanted to lead, but the complaint made him fear he was risking too much. A patient, a Latina grandmother, thanked him, saying, "You give us hope, doctor." The praise was sincere, but Miguel wondered if he could live up to it. Ana became a vital anchor. At Fisherman's Wharf, the scent of salt and fries in the air, she revealed her decision to stay in residency relied on Miguel's inspiration. "You showed me what matters," she said, tearing into sourdough. Noticing his tension, she added, "You're carrying the world, Miguel. Let us help." He confessed about the complaint and the note. "Pick your side." Ana was furious. "That's jealousy or fear. Don't let it stop you." Her strength pushed him, but he feared letting her down if he wavered. Sophia brought a personal connection. Her mural inspired by Miguel was vandalized, likely by investors pressuring the mission. "They want to erase our voice," she said at the apartment, scrubbing paint off her hands. Miguel helped restore the mural, painting beside her under mission lights. The act stirred childhood memories of drawing with his mother. "Ever done something just because it makes you happy?" Sophia asked. Miguel paused, then read a poem about freedom from his notebook. Sophia smiled. "That's who you are. Show the world." Their bond grew, but the vandalism reminded him of the cost of standing up. Raphael's connection deepened the emotional stakes. After Miguel's honesty, Raphael wrote that his words inspired him to stay in college. "You made me see I don't need to be perfect," he said, asking Miguel to visit their father. Miguel planned the trip, but feared facing his father's expectations of being the family's pride. At Golden Gate Park, running, he stopped by the lake, his mother's letter in his pocket. "Be yourself, even if it hurts." But how, when every choice split his loyalty? At UCSF, the complaint took new shape. Dr. Elena revealed the administration was investigating, and Diego, a colleague, hinted, "I didn't file it, but I know who might have." He pointed to competitive students resentful of Miguel's rise. The revelation brought relief but also anger. He was targeted for standing out and being different. Elena advised, "Use this as fuel, Miguel. Show who you are." The talk bolstered him, but the investigation drained him. San Francisco's 1990s unrest added context. Proposition 187 protests grew, and Miguel's rally speech drew national attention, but also scrutiny. A local article questioned if future doctors should engage in politics. Carter used it to pressure him, suggesting he reassess priorities. Unexpected support came from a retired professor who praised Miguel's courage, likening him to 1960s activists. On a mission hilltop, Miguel whispered, "I won't give in." But the next step demanded more than courage. It demanded sacrifice. Winter 1995 blanketed San Francisco in thick fog, and Miguel Rodriguez felt his life's conflicts converge toward a breaking point. The UCSF investigation, his father's fragile health, the Mission Clinic campaign, and the pressure to be a role model for Raphael pushed him to the edge. Every choice now felt final, testing his ability to live authentically, while his bonds with Ana, Sophia, Javier, and Raphael intertwined in a critical moment. At UCSF, the investigation reached its peak. Dr. Carter called Miguel for a formal hearing, where his career hung in the balance. In the fluorescent-lit auditorium, Carter presented the complaint as evidence of lacked focus. "You're wasting your potential, Rodriguez," he said sharply. Dr. Elena Torres defended him. "He's bringing humanity to medicine, something many of us lack." Miguel, center stage, felt every eye on him. He wanted to explain his passion for the clinic, but fear of losing his residency silenced him. Finally, he breathed deeply and said, "I want to be a doctor who makes a difference, not just one who impresses." The room fell silent, Carter's frown deepened, and the administration promised a decision soon. In the Mission, the anti-gentrification campaign hit a decisive moment. A city hall hearing would determine the clinic's fate. Javier urged Miguel to lead the final speech, despite his doubts. On stage, facing a divided crowd, Miguel spoke passionately about healthcare as a human right, sharing stories of patients he'd helped. "This clinic is the heart of the mission," he declared. The audience cheered, but a real estate representative scoffed. A medical student should be studying, not protesting. The jab echoed Carter's words, cutting deep. Miguel left the hearing exhausted, wondering if his voice mattered. Raphael's connection brought another critical point. In Los Angeles, Miguel visited his father in the hospital, an emotionally charged encounter. His father, weak, gripped his hand and said, "You look so tired, son." Miguel confessed about the investigation and his struggle to be authentic. Raphael, beside him, admitted, "I went back to college because of you, but I see you're lost too." Raphael's honesty forced Miguel to face the truth. His need for approval had hurt not just himself, but those who looked up to him. Ana and Sophia bolstered the moment. At Golden Gate Park, Ana confronted him. "You're so close to being yourself, but you're scared of what's next, aren't you?" She revealed her community health proposal was approved, thanks to Miguel. "You changed me. Now go all the way." Sophia, at the gallery opening, unveiled the restored mural, a man breaking chains. "You're almost there," she said, handing him a microphone to read his poem. The raw, powerful reading moved the crowd, but Miguel knew the real test loomed. San Francisco's 1990s context deepened the stakes. Proposition 187 protests raged, and Miguel's City Hall speech gained attention, but also backlash. An article questioned if doctors should politicize medicine, amplifying UCSF pressure. A national activist renewed the offer to fund the clinic, but only if Miguel became its full-time spokesperson, a role that would alienate him from UCSF. On a Mission hilltop, clutching his mother's letter, Miguel felt the weight of the investigation, his father, the campaign, and Raphael. He whispered, "I choose to be me." The climax loomed, and there was no turning back. San Francisco, winter 1995, thrummed with restless energy, and Miguel Rodriguez felt the ground shake beneath him. The UCSF investigation, his father's fragile health, the clinic campaign, and Raphael's expectations converged in confrontations that forced him to decide who he was. Each interaction was a defining moment, propelling the story toward its climax. At UCSF, the investigation hearing became a decisive showdown. Dr. Carter, stern, issued a final ultimatum: drop the activism or lose my residency recommendation. Dr. Elena Torres countered, Miguel's redefining what a doctor can be. Would you rather train robots or humans? Miguel, in the auditorium's center, felt the weight of every word. Clutching his mother's letter in his pocket, he said, Dr. Carter, I respect your guidance, but I chose medicine to help people, not to win applause. If that costs me residency, so be it. The room went silent, Carter stormed out, and the administration's decision remained pending. Miguel felt relief and terror. He'd spoken his truth, but at what price? In the Mission, the clinic campaign faced its own showdown. City Hall announced the final vote on the clinic's fate, and Javier insisted Miguel lead the last rally at Golden Gate Park. Under a gray sky, thousands gathered, holding signs and chanting for justice. Miguel took the stage, heart pounding. This clinic is more than a building, he said. It's where our families find hope. He shared the story of the grandmother who likened him to her son, moving the crowd. But real estate opponents jeered, calling him naive. Miguel stood firm, but the words stung, echoing his insecurities. Raphael's connection brought another pivotal moment. After the hospital visit, Raphael called. Dad's better, but he wants to see you again. He thanked Miguel. Your honesty made me believe I can fail and still try. Miguel, moved, saw his candor was reshaping his family. He promised to return, but the trip clashed with the clinic vote and UCSF verdict. On the flight back, he wrote a poem about a son choosing self-love over duty, each word a step toward resolution. Anna and Sophia reinforced the critical moment. At a Mission cafe, Anna challenged him. You're finally being you, but scared of what's next, right? She revealed her community health proposal was approved, inspired by him. You gave me courage, now follow yours. Sophia, at the gallery, showed a new mural version, the man gazing at the horizon. You're almost there, she said, urging him to read his poem at the opening. Miguel agreed, but the weight of his choices suffocated him. San Francisco's 1990s resistance against Proposition 187 added context. Miguel's park speech went viral in local papers, drawing national eyes but also scrutiny. The activists' offer to fund the clinic demanded Miguel become its spokesperson, risking UCSF ties. A colleague, Diego, confirmed the complaint came from a jealous peer, but the administration wavered. On a Mission hilltop, Miguel clutched his mother's letter. Be yourself, even if it hurts. Every confrontation, with Carter, opponents, his insecurities, was a step toward freedom. But the final choice loomed, security or courage. He whispered, I am enough. The climax was imminent, and there was no turning back. San Francisco, winter 1995, held its breath in a tense silence, as if awaiting Miguel Rodriguez's next move. The final City Hall vote on the community clinic, the UCSF investigation verdict, and his father's health in Los Angeles converged in a moment of maximum tension. Each step tested his courage to live authentically, and his bonds with Anna, Sophia, Javier, and Raphael pushed him toward an irreversible transformation. At UCSF, the administration set the complaint verdict for the same day as the clinic vote. Dr. Carter's email was blunt. Your decision now defines your future, Rodriguez. Dr. Elena Torres offered support in the hallway. You've shown who you are, she said. Don't back down now. But fear of losing his residency, his gateway to stability, suffocated him. He imagined his peers' disappointment, failing his family. Yet his mother's letter whispered, be yourself, even if it hurts. In the Mission, the campaign reached its peak. City Hall overflowed with residents, activists, and reporters awaiting the clinic's fate. Javier handed Miguel the final speech, insisting, "You're our voice." On stage, under bright lights, Miguel faced a divided crowd. He spoke of the families relying on the clinic, sharing the grandmother's story. "This clinic isn't just a building," he said, voice steady despite inner tremors. "It's where we build hope together." Cheers erupted, but a real estate representative sneered. A student shouldn't be protesting. The jab echoed Carter's words, pushing Miguel to the edge. Raphael's call intensified the stakes. "Dad's asking for you," he said, voice shaky. "But he's proud, Miguel. He talks about you all the time." The revelation hit hard. His father, whom he feared disappointing, saw him with pride. Miguel promised to visit after the vote, but guilt for being consumed by San Francisco gnawed at him. He wrote a poem on the plane about a man carrying love and truth, each word a step toward resolution. Anna and Sophia were pillars in the storm. At Golden Gate Park, Anna said, "You're so close, Miguel. Don't let fear win now." She revealed her community health proposal was approved, thanks to him. "You changed me. Now finish this." At the gallery opening, Sophia unveiled the restored mural. A man breaking chains, surrounded by vibrant colors. "You're free," she said, handing him a microphone. His raw poem moved the crowd, but the real test loomed. San Francisco's 1990s fight against Proposition 187 fueled the tension. Miguel's City Hall speech hit national news, increasing scrutiny. The activists' offer to fund the clinic demanded he become its spokesperson, risking UCSF ties. Another anonymous note in his locker read, "Last chance, Rodriguez. Choose right." The intrigue suggested the complaint had allies within UCSF, tightening the noose. On a Mission hilltop, city lights below, Miguel held his mother's letter. The vote, the verdict, his father and Raphael converged. He felt the weight of each choice, but a new clarity emerged. Living for approval had destroyed him too long. He whispered, "I choose to be me." The climax loomed, with no retreat possible. San Francisco, winter 1995, stood still, as if the city held its breath with Miguel Rodriguez. The day of the City Hall vote on the community clinic and the UCSF investigation verdict arrived, marking the peak of his journey. His father's health, Raphael's expectations, and the pressure from Anna, Sophia, and Javier converged in a moment that would define if Miguel could live authentically. Each choice was a leap into the unknown, his mother's letter a guiding light. At City Hall, the packed hall buzzed with residents, activists, and reporters. Miguel took the stage, heart racing, for the final speech before the vote. He saw Javier's nod and Anna's thumbs up in the crowd. "This clinic is our story," he began, voice firm. He spoke of families he'd helped, the grandmother who saw her son in him, and the fight against Proposition 187, echoing 1990s exclusion. "If we lose this, we lose who we are." His passion ignited the crowd, but a real estate representative countered, "Dreams don't pay bills." Recalling his mother's letter, "Be yourself, even if it hurts," Miguel replied. "But without dreams, we have no future." The crowd roared, and the vote ended in a narrow victory. The clinic was saved. Miguel hugged Javier, tears in his eyes, feeling his voice had mattered. At UCSF, the investigation verdict brought the final showdown. Dr. Carter, stern, said, "Your clinic work compromised your academic objectivity." Dr. Elena presented a petition signed by peers and patients, defending Miguel's vision. Surprisingly, Diego, who'd hinted at the complaint's source, spoke. "I envied Miguel, but he showed me what medicine can be." The administration, swayed by the petition and the clinic's victory, dismissed the complaint, but Carter refused to sign Miguel's residency recommendation. Standing tall, Miguel said, "I don't need your approval, Dr. Carter. I choose my path." The silence was deafening, but Elena smiled. "You're already a doctor, Miguel." His father's health brought the most emotional resolution. In Los Angeles, Miguel found him in the hospital. Weak but lucid, his father gripped his hand. "I saw you in the paper, son. You're fighting for something bigger. I always knew you could." Miguel wept, confessing, "I thought I had to be perfect to make you proud." His father smiled. "You being you is enough." Raphael, beside them, hugged Miguel, saying his honesty helped him find his own path. The reconciliation healed old wounds, showing the cost of his journey was worth it. Back in San Francisco, Anna and Sophia celebrated. At Golden Gate Park, Anna hugged him. "You changed medicine for me, Miguel. Now change the world." Sophia revealed the mural inspired by him was bought by a community foundation, ensuring his story lived on in the mission. Miguel read a final poem at the gallery about a man finding his voice in chaos, earning a standing ovation. He accepted the activists' offer to be the clinic's spokesperson, choosing authenticity over security. In the 1990s context, the clinic's victory echoed resistance against Proposition 187, a milestone for San Francisco's Latino communities. Miguel, now a symbol of change, saw his fight as part of a larger movement. On a mission hilltop, he held his mother's letter. For the first time, he felt whole, free from the weight of approval. The climax wasn't just saving the clinic or keeping his career, but realizing being himself was his greatest triumph. He whispered, "I am enough." The city shimmered below, as if answering, "You always were." Winter 1995 gave way to a clearer sky in San Francisco, as if the city celebrated Miguel Rodriguez's transformation. The community clinic's victory, the UCSF investigation's dismissal, and his reconciliation with his father marked the end of a grueling journey and the start of a new chapter. Free from the burden of others' approval, Miguel reflected on what it meant to live authentically, while his bonds with Ana, Sofia, Javier, and Rafael solidified, tying together a story that resonated with the 1990s fight for identity. In the Mission District, the clinic thrived with renewed life. As its official spokesperson, Miguel worked with Javier to expand services, helping more Latino families in a neighborhood resisting gentrification. At a new equipment inauguration, funded by the national activist, Javier clapped his shoulder. "You gave us more than a clinic, Miguel. You gave hope." Miguel smiled, reflecting. Hope came because he chose to be himself. He thought of his mother's letter, now a talisman. Be yourself, even if it hurts. The pain had been worth it. Ana found her own path. Inspired by Miguel, she integrated community health into UCSF's residency program, becoming a voice for systemic change. At a Fisherman's Wharf cafe, sea sparkling behind, she raised her cup in a toast. "You taught me medicine is about people, not awards," she said. Miguel laughed, admitting. "And you taught me not to give up." Anna's arc closed with a vow, to keep fighting for equity, with Miguel as her ally. He saw her not just as a friend, but a mirror of his courage. Sofia, in their apartment, finished a new mural celebrating the mission's community. The man who once broke chains now stood among diverse faces, symbolizing unity. At the gallery opening, she thanked Miguel publicly. "You helped me believe in my work," she said, eyes shining. Miguel read a new poem about roots and freedom, feeling the weight of approval dissolve. Sofia's arc intertwined with his. Both learned that art, like medicine, thrives in authenticity. Rafael, in Los Angeles, found resolution. Miguel's honesty inspired him to persist in college, sending regular updates. During a visit, Miguel and Rafael walked through the hospital where their father, now recovering, watched them proudly. "You two are stronger than I was," he said, voice faint but firm. Miguel saw his journey not only freed him, but broke his family's cycle of expectations. Rafael's arc closed with a promise to live without fear of failure, echoing Miguel's growth. In the 1990s historical context, the clinic's victory mirrored the fight against Proposition 187, which, though passed in 1994, faced legal resistance in 1995. San Francisco's history of social movements celebrated small wins like Miguel's. His story, now in local papers, inspired others to challenge the status quo, showing authenticity could shift systems. Miguel reflected on the era's tension and hope, where communities like the Mission fought to be seen. On a Mission hilltop, Miguel gazed at the city, his final poem in hand. He was no longer the man fearing judgment, but one embracing his roots, passion, and flaws. His journey taught him that authenticity wasn't a destination, but a daily commitment. He tucked away his mother's letter, knowing she'd always been right. Miguel's story reminds us we all carry chains, whether others' expectations or inner fears. What's your chain? Reflect. What would you do if you chose to be yourself, fearless? Miguel, Ana, Sofia, and Rafael will keep fighting for their communities, and you can follow their next stories. Subscribe to the channel to catch the next chapters of this journey of courage and change. If this story touched you, watch our next video, exploring other voices that defied the impossible. Click now and join our community of dreamers.